to the CDG BizCast. I'm your host, Christian Gonzalez, co-owner of Creativity Design Group, a digital marketing firm in Houston, Texas. Today, we are interviewing a seasoned entrepreneur with a passion for fitness. Please welcome Brian Cook, founder and CEO of StretchMed, a boutique fitness company that was founded in 2019 and is rapidly expanding across the U.S. Welcome to the show, Brian. It's great to have you.
Hey, Christian. Great to be here.
Welcome to CDG BizCast. Please introduce StretchMed to the listeners. Please tell us about what you do, what StretchMed's mission and vision is, and why you started StretchMed.
All right, great. I have a long history in fitness and health, and definitely my passion. And just personally, once I crossed 40 years old, the typical aches and pains became more frequent. And stretching has just been a problem. Never liked it. I do it, but I've never really enjoyed it. And then as I started to see stretching concepts open up in different areas, I thought, wow, that was interesting. And decided to, it was in our wheelhouse with my team, a fantastic team that helped start StretchMed. So we had the capability. So as I started to do the research, I learned that there's approximately 160 million Americans in chronic pain, which is something staggering. So StretchMed was developed to eliminate chronic pain. So our purpose is to eliminate chronic pain, increase mobility, rejuvenate, and help you move well. And we do that by offering a series of different stretching protocols. So we have a 25-minute protocol, a 40-minute protocol, a 55-minute stretching protocol, and then our longest one is a 70-minute protocol. And these different stretching sequences essentially are going to help you deal with whatever limitation you have, where you're getting pain from. We started in 2019, as you mentioned, and just this past year, we've got 30 locations open now, and we've got 27 more in development. So 2024 should be a big year for us.
Nice. Your company is fairly new, and within that 5-year period, it's already rapidly growing, which is great. A lot of entrepreneurs that I deal with often tell me that they're not sure how their first few years are going to go, and for the most part, most startup businesses do not really see success within the first 5 years, and that's normal for most startups. However, StretchMed seems to be on a different track, as within your first year of opening your doors, it's already growing. Tell me more about your life as an entrepreneur. How did you begin your entrepreneurial journey? And aside from what you've just told me, what else led you to forming StretchMed, and what makes it different from your competitors? How did you begin your entrepreneurial journey to begin with? Why did you decide that you wanted to live life as a business owner?
Yeah, so for me, I definitely was an entrepreneur before I even heard the word. I actually remember hearing the word for the first time when I was in college, if you can believe it. So for me, my entrepreneurial journey really became really, really young. I had, paper routes, but that maybe not qualified. My first real business, I was actually 12 years old, and my dad bought me 25 lobster traps. So I used to pull traps with him after working on the weekends, and we'd sell the lobsters to the neighbors. So it was kind of my first experience of working really hard, some days making no money, some days making, $70, $80. When you're 12, it's a lot of money. Kind of got that bug. And then I had construction businesses and painting and landscaping. And I realized even at 15, 16, I could make $800 in a week, where you just could not make that with a normal minimum wage job. So then as I, got into the workforce, finished high school, I started college and was doing construction jobs, and just definitely didn't want to go down that route. So ended up, while I was going to Northeastern, started personal fitness training. So always loved fitness, always worked out as a kid, played sports. So I got certified, and that's kind of where I first got into running a business inside of a gym. I had a private personal training clientele. And then about 3 years after that, I opened up my first brick and mortar one-on-one personal training studio back in 1995. And that was where I first kind of took a leap of faith and, really worked probably 100 hours a week for 5 years in a row. I mean, insanely difficult. Back then, there was no digital marketing. It was all postcards and newspapers and, guerrilla marketing kind of stuff, but loved it. And I think when you do something you love, you don't mind the work, it's led to bigger things. So for many years, I've done boutique fitness concepts, one-on-one training, small group training. And then end of 2019, StretchMed, really the next entity And we're just beginning our 5th year, which is kind of great. And StretchMed will be the 3rd time that we've got a company from scratch to $1 million in profit within 5 years. So definitely excited about, 3rd time's a charm kind of thing. Learned a ton, and now I'm excited for my future because it just keep getting better at this franchise concept. In terms of competitors, there's a few in the space. There's really 3 of us that have the most of the market share. And when I did my research, I flew around the country, went to all of them, and was surprised that they all did something different. Even the franchises I visited, even within the same franchise, they did things different. So I was like, all right, we can definitely do it better. So we spent 9 months on our stretch. So had a team of athletic trainers, had a muscular therapist, kinesiology, exercise physiology. So a bunch of people kind of got their hands into it, and we really perfected the stretch. And that's why I explain it, because we have this really, really good sequence of stretches head to toe. So there's 36 stretches done head to toe in our 55-minute protocol. The competitors, because of the full autonomy they give therapists, there's just less stretching done, right? And when you don't have an efficient process, you just waste a lot of time moving from stretch to stretch. So we've just got this head to toe kind of sequence. And the way we customize it is the hold, relax part is where we customize the PNFs. And you've probably heard of the term PNF, proprioceptive neuromuscular facilitation. It's just a term used to, once we get you to an end range of your flexibility, we're going to get you to fire the muscle. We're going to hold you and then ask you to relax, and then we can get a little bit deeper in the stretch. So it's a deep stretch that it's really hard to get to on your own. So yeah, so I hope that answered your question.
And yes, it does. StretchMed sounds like an extremely intelligent concept. And I love how you were able to visit your competitors and see what they were doing. And then when you decided you wanted to start your own business, you wanted to perfect on the concept. Other people were doing the same thing, but you saw that they just weren't doing it the right way, or they were lacking in certain areas. So that's where you stepped in and formed a business that filled in all those voids, which thus would lead the customer to seeing a better value for what they're spending, because they keep spending a lot of money, but they may not be getting the best results. And StretchMed stepped in to be the difference between a business that's similar but isn't really delivering the best results and one that is. StretchMed strives to give the best results to all of its clients where your competitors were not, basically. Would you say that's correct?
Yeah, and a couple things to add to that is that, so we're piloting, this is really new. It's not fully launched, so we're piloting a new, series of stretching protocols in 3 stores right now. And so far, after 3 months or just beginning of 3rd month, it's been incredibly successful. And the best way to explain is the industry has currently charged roughly, $75 to $85 for a 50-minute stretch. And what we recently launched is a membership that's $80 a month, which includes 4 25-minute stretches. So what we're excited about is we made stretching now affordable to essentially everybody. So if there's a guy or gal that's got sciatica and they're a waiter or waitress at Chili's, they could walk into StretchMed for $80 a month and come in once a week and actually experience professional stretching to help with whatever limitation that they're having. So that's exciting. The other thing that we did that we massively improved upon was unit economics. Anytime you open a business, is particularly brick and mortar, you're guessing on what the demand's going to be. You don't really know what the demand's going to be. So, our personal view is let's make the studio smaller and let's make sure that there's more demand than the supply that we have, just to make sure we didn't overshoot in our assumptions. So, we've got stretching studios in as little as 500 square feet up to 1,200 square feet, where some of our competitors are in, 2,000 square feet, even larger. Their models are costing somewhere in the, $300,000 to $400,000 range to open. And ours are pretty much in that $100,000 to $150,000 space. So we're trying to make it more affordable, reach more people with a more affordable stretch, better unit economics, and then just tons of support. The whole thing with franchising is you've got to provide unparalleled support. And we take our owners essentially from start to finish, from the minute to become an owner all the way through grand opening and then ongoing support.
Very interesting. This is a great concept, and it's nice to see that it's taking off like a rocket, because there really aren't too many other businesses out there like this where you can actually take it and franchise it. A lot of people will just start a location and then they'll just multiply locations and keep them all owned by the same entity, whereas you're taking your concept, you're franchising it. Like what's done in the fast food industry, basically. People can buy the rights to the name and then they get access to trade secrets and things like that. And in terms of real estate, how would you say owners pick their spaces? Are y'all able to provide support on helping them pick a space, or are they on their own in terms of finding the right spot? What I'm basically trying to ask is, are there certain guidelines owners have to abide by when they are renting a space to start a StretchMed studio?
Yeah, definitely. So as of now, since it may be this way forever, but definitely while we're small and growing, we are hands-on every step of the way. So the best way I explain it is, if you bought a franchise, it would be like we're opening the location and you're coming along for the ride. So we perform site selection. It starts with picking the right territory. So we're gonna run a demographic analysis. We're gonna show you, we're gonna compare zip codes and areas and show you where the highest density of population is with the most wealth. So we're gonna look for density and wealth. We're then gonna start negotiating and looking at locations. We send letters of intent. We negotiate the lease. We then develop floor plans and virtual CAD designs so you can actually see what the StretchMed will look like even before it's open. Then it's everything from lease negotiation. We've hired a third-party consultant who has been an expert in this space. So he actually assists you with hiring your manager and providing ongoing support, via weekly KPI calls with all the StretchMed managers. So tons of hands-on support. And then, as an owner, we're going to teach you really be an analyst. So we're going to say, hey, there's really 12 numbers you need to know, but those get distilled down into 3. And it's, the 3 main numbers I look at. I tell my team that all I really care about, I want to look at 3 numbers. So we do free intros. So the way we get customers into the studios is we'll offer just to come in for a free 25-minute intro to try it out. So it's number of intros booked, and that could be just month to date or total. And that tells me if the marketing's working. And the next number we look at is total customers, which tells me if the sales process is working. And the third number is lifetime value, which is simply taking total revenue from day one divided by total customers from day one. And that tells us, the length of time you're keeping customers. So those 3 numbers will really tell you the health of your business, no different than, blood pressure, heart rate, and cholesterol might tell you what kind of health you're in physically. So really getting our owners to be data-driven. The other concept we like to really focus on is wealth creation is the direct correlation of your ability to develop people. So a franchise is really a widget, highly articulated widget that we want to train someone else to run. So then we as the owner/investor can really just become analysts as opposed to buying a full-time job.
In order to become a StretchMed franchisee, what do y'all look for? What are the requirements if somebody is interested in buying a StretchMed franchise?
Yeah, really, I think I'd say being a good student, right? Because we want someone that's going to come in and learn a system instead of come in and just kind of try to reinvent the system. Good student, like people, treat your employees like family, really just someone that's going to provide just a great customer experience and really just develop people. People, unfortunately, think of employees as equipment, not actually real people. So we really try to stress that in the beginning when we meet people, and, discovery calls and discovery days is just making sure that they're just good people, right? Really good. And because if you can develop your team, and frankly, it's one person. So if you're an owner, Christian, I'd say really you can develop one person, this rock star manager, and this manager is going to develop an assistant manager, and the assistant manager is going to develop a bunch of part-timers. So we cascade leadership in that direction. It's not you, the owner, starting to manage a part-time therapist on the weekend, because now that's reverse delegation. Business becomes a headache. So it's really, everyone's got a position, everyone's got a job. These are the data points. This is what we measure. Here's the exact playbook on how to run a studio. So yeah, really anyone who's just business minded, pleasing personality, empathy, and we've had really good success with the SBA, which is really cool. So they were on their approved franchise list, and so most owners, I think the last 10 or 15 owners have all got SBA loans, and all they require is 20% down. So typically owners would put like $40,000 down and a business plan, which we have a consultant again that is helping with business plans for $300-400, pretty reasonable. And then the SBA comes up with the rest of the money. So it's been great.
I love how you're describing the process. It sounds like that every single little aspect of starting a StretchMed franchise is taken into account very seriously. Everything's looked at, everything is seen very carefully to make sure that the best experience possible is provided to both the customer and the owner. And let me also step back a little bit about what you said about treating employees like family. I am a strong believer in that. When you have employees that feel good, they feel motivated every day. They don't feel like it's a burden every day to get up to go to work every day. When you hate your job, that's how it feels. I'm speaking from experience because when I worked in the corporate world, that's how I felt, because I had bosses who just kind of viewed me as a piece of machinery rather than an employee, and there was no family aspect to it. So having employees who are trained well, they feel like family and feel valued when they come to work every day, that overall ends up creating a great experience for the customer, because now the customers are being treated properly because the employees feel motivated to serve them. They don't feel an ounce of rudeness, an ounce of bitterness towards the customer, which normally comes as a result of hating your job. So yes, I am a strong believer in treating employees like family. And as for customers, who would you say your target market and ideal customer is? Now, earlier your example was a server at a restaurant, so I see that it could be somebody who is on their feet quite a bit every day, especially as part of their job. So in general, who would you say your target market and ideal customer is for StretchMed?
Yeah, so normally prior to this new pricing strategy that we're piloting, it was, the typical $80 a session, 50-minute session. Once a week would cost you roughly, $340 a month. Twice a week could be, $600 a month. So we were really catering to a 40+ affluent customer. But now with $80 a month, that people can come in once a week for 25 minutes, or they can use essentially $80 a month gets you 4 credits. A 25-minute stretch is 1 credit. You could come in for 4 credits and just do one 70-minute stretch, and that'd be $80. But now the price point allows, it's $80 a month for you to add stretching to your self-care routine. So we're pretty confident that virtually anyone can afford $80 a month. I mean, it's not $10 a month, but then again, it's one-on-one stretching. You're gonna walk into a gorgeous studio with the right music and colors and decor. You're gonna spend 15 minutes on this flexibility trainer, kind of dynamic warming up different stretching patterns and movement sequences that we've designed. And then you're gonna get on a table, 6 inches of high density foam, just incredible. And then you're gonna experience someone putting you through hands-on deep stretching, which is, most people have never experienced it. So to me, for $20 a week to get that kind of experience, and then the plan where we're going to take StretchMed is we're going to develop an app. So we're going to get you to, encourage you to buy a flexibility trainer for home. So a trainer, a flexibility trainer, a yoga mat, straps, and blocks. Then we're going to help you build an at-home routine via an app that we can check your progress. So when you come in once a week, it's like, hey, Chris, how'd you do this week? And you're like, oh, awesome. Or like, oh yeah, I see you got 2 stretches in. Let's get that up to 4. So we really become mobility coaches and add some accountability to the program. So then that $80 that you're paying a month is going to just have more and more value. And frankly, it would be the last thing you would cut out of your budget. So that's the goal, is to make that $80 so valuable that you wouldn't even think about quitting. And then again, what does that mean? That third number I explained earlier, lifetime value, that just keeps going up and up and up. And when you've got a really good lifetime value, it means you can spend more money in marketing. You can't really market until you know what your lifetime value is, because you don't know what your customer acquisition costs are. So you got to know lifetime value in order to know what you should be spending on marketing. And then the goal is always to increase lifetime value and keep customers longer, because it's not great to cycle and have customers just turn over. It just makes business really hard.
That's true. That's one of the hardest things to look into when you're starting a business for the first time. A lot of people who start businesses are not aware of what customer acquisition costs are, and they're also not too familiar with certain marketing concepts. I always say this to everyone who's starting a business. You could be great at what you do. For example, if you're good at fixing cars, you might want to start a mechanic shop. You might want to start an auto repair shop because you know the ins and outs of repairing a car. But the question you have to ask yourself yourself is, while you may know you're good at fixing cars, do you know what it takes to own an auto repair shop? Do you know what it takes to run a business in general? And that's where acquisition costs come in, marketing costs come in, basically learning the ropes of running a business in general.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, what were some major challenges you faced as you started StretchMed, and how did you overcome them?
Good question. So even though it's StretchMed, it's been my fourth company in 30 years, it's always hard, right? And I think you're always undercapitalized. That's just a fact. You have to just be like, all right, I'm undercapitalized, and what do I do now to overcome that? So, I mean, for us, the biggest challenge is we opened up in November 2019. Got off to an amazing start, sold, 3 franchises or so, and then COVID hit, boom, had to shut down, go through that whole thing. And that just kind of, took some steam out of our growth. So we kind of pushed through. I think the other thing that was kind of hard is just pivoting, making pivots to the concept. So it's really hard to have the first, 10, 20, 30 locations and then have to make changes. And I'll tell you, without the owners, there is no franchise. So I'm very appreciative of the owners. They're an amazing group of people. And I just really appreciate their trust and putting their life savings with us. And that's huge. And then from the owners, it's then the team. And we've got an amazing 12-person team right now, which they're all amazing. So really, I'd say the biggest challenge for us was refining the process in a post-COVID world, because we had a recipe that worked flawlessly, and then COVID knocked the lights out of it. And we had basically had to rebuild the model kind of midstream. And we were just doing pop-up events and kind of guerrilla marketing. And then we had to pivot to full digital strategy. We've gone through multiple digital agencies, and unfortunately, there's a lot of bad agencies out there. So now we've got a good one. And then I'd say lastly, it's knowing your numbers, right? Really getting clear, knowing your numbers. We might have a couple of franchise owners that this may not be the best fit for them, but for the most part, we've got a pretty solid bunch of people we're very fortunate to have. So yeah, I would just say overcoming lack of capital. But we've been positive cash flow pretty much from day one. And one thing I'll mention that we're going to do, which I'm super excited about, is we're going to raise capital through equity crowdfunding company called Republic. It looks like we're going to go with that entity. So yeah. So what I've learned now is I'm just going to raise capital earlier in the process as opposed to later in the process.
I believe that is the smart thing to do. That way you'll have some money on hand to keep business operations going. You don't want to wait till later when you come across an event that requires a little bit more money than what you have at the moment. Having access to the capital ahead of time, basically insurance, you could say. It's having that emergency funding on hand, and you'll be ready to go with whatever venture comes your way.
Definitely.
And as for COVID, I found your story quite relatable, as it does parallel a lot of what we went through at CDG. You started StretchMed right before COVID came and just knocked the wind out of so many small businesses across the world. That's what was so unfortunate. See, at the time, it was November of 2019. Nobody knew that COVID was coming. Nobody knew that the world was basically going to shut down for over 2 years. What I found impressive was that you were able to adapt almost immediately once you saw that COVID was shutting businesses down and that you had to close the studios off to the public. You were able to adapt immediately, and I find that really, really impressive, as a lot of business owners unfortunately had to shut down their operations, or they had to limit what services they could sell, and they had to cut costs due to the cost of goods sold rising due to COVID affecting the markets.
Yeah, definitely.
In our case, believe it or not, we almost went out of business in 2021 because a lot of our customers were either looking for cheap or free alternatives to our services, or they went out of business altogether. Just like with your story related to how you recovered, we had to basically reestablish ourselves again. When 2021 was over, we started seeing business pick up again in 2022, and basically we had to relaunch the company. We had to start over again. It was as if we were starting the business from scratch. We had to reestablish our customer base. We had to start remarketing to the public again. It just felt like that we were starting the company all over again, even though we had been in business since 2017. You could kind of see the parallels between what we went through with CDG and how you were able to relaunch StretchMed after the uglier side of the COVID shutdowns came to an end.
Yeah, we lost. So just to give you an idea about the growth, so we started end of 19, but when we began 2022, we only had 5 locations because of what COVID had done. So we literally 2021 and 2021 were kind of just bust because of just how, the effects. But then in 22, we went from 5 locations to 22 locations. So we had a really big growth spurt. And then 2023 was more kind of, let's pull back the throttle, and we kind of seasoned the stores that opened. And I think we ended the year with 27. And then this year we started 24 with 27, and we've got another 25 or so in the queue. So we should comfortably end the year with 50 or 60 locations, and hiring a bunch of team, new corporate office in Puerto Rico, pouring money into marketing now, and things will start to scale up. So yeah, COVID for a lot of us did some damage, but you kind of learn from it. And even for me, it's like I've got like a really detailed playbook now. So the next time I start a company, it's like, wow, this is going to be really good information to have.
Right, the light at the end of the tunnel, I guess you could say. That's what your 2022 was, because that's what it was for us too. And correct me if I'm wrong, but would you agree with me that 2021 was truly the worst year for business in general? I would say that it was worse than 2020, because 2020 was only the beginning. 2021 is when we really saw the ugly after effects of what COVID was doing to the world, especially the business world.
Yeah, definitely. Because once all the PPP dried up and the money that the government gave out, and for us, it didn't help at all. All it did is just buy time, which is unfortunate. And then we had to deal with a lot. So it's kind of, and we've got some fitness studios on the fitness side that were more severely impacted than StretchMed was. So had to kind of navigate that, but here we are today, and what they say, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. So we're in good shape now.
I agree with that statement 100%. Every negative experience should always be taken as a learning experience, and once we learn from these unfortunate events, we're able to fine-tune ourselves so that way we can succeed next time something like this happens again, or we know what to do. It's all about having a contingency plan. If we make mistakes along the way that affect our business operations or our lives in general in the long run, learning from how bad the experience was, how it affected us, that should encourage us to better ourselves and take steps to ensure that we don't make these same mistakes again. But of course, there are times where we don't make mistakes at all, and it's just the state the world's in right now, and COVID was the example we're using here. The downfalls related to COVID were no faults of our own. That's just something that happened in the world, and we had to basically prepare accordingly and take action accordingly. Now, what do you do personally to stay motivated whenever the chips are down and things are just really hurting our business and the way things are going? Like, you're not exactly sure how the future looks.
It's a good question. So for me personally, and I've been doing this for many years now, is I have this, I call it visionary work. So I think everyone, when they, for me at least, what I recommend is when I wake up in the morning, back in the day, it was always maybe an hour to 2 hours where I would just go through, definite chief aim, and, just go through a daily planner. So you've got to develop this kind of morning routine, daily planner, just review goals, gratitude, things you're grateful for. And the other big one I like is, I call it 3 new habits, because the habits that you have now got you to today. Those are not going to get you to the future. So you've got to develop new habits. And what I do is write 3 things down, and I have to write them every day until it's literally ingrained in what I do. And then I just pick something else. So it's, it's really getting clear in the morning. And now for me, with so much going on, many years into this now, so I typically get up around 5 a.m. I don't meet with my team until, 10 or even 11. So I've got now a 5-hour morning routine, and it's awesome. I get really clear on strategy. And like I said earlier, this whole thing is about developing people. And, we can only do so much with our 2 hands. And once we kind of get clear about that, you just got to get in a situation that you develop people. Even if you work somewhere, make sure you're at a company that allows you to develop people. And I'll tell you, your employer you'll be incredibly valuable to your employer. And I tell my team, I'm like, look, you guys start developing people, you become worth, your weight in gold. And then the other, I guess, piece is that for me, if your listeners do Strength Finder assessment, I think it's Strength Finders 2.0. And one of mine is like, I'm a futurist. So it's kind of like, I pretty much just always love building. And even to back up, if you love what you do, so let's just go back to that. I really would encourage everyone, don't ever get into a business if you don't love it, because it's just so much work that you're probably not going to dig in when the going gets tough. But if you actually love what you do, it's really not work. You're just playing all day. And I always bring up this thought I have, and I have a buddy that's a stay-at-home dad and always trying to get me to go golfing. And sometimes I would just tell him I have a meeting and I don't have a meeting. Like I could go golfing, but I'd rather work. And so that's really the question. If you'd rather work than do something else that you love, you're doing the right work. And if that's not the case, I would keep my day job. I would start to do the thing that I love on the side, 10, 15 hours a week. And guard the day job, keep that to 40 hours, not a minute longer, and then work on your side hustle that gives you passion and joy, and then figure out how to monetize that. And as soon as you've got that monetized, then make the leap, get out of the 9 to 5, and then you're doing what you love all day. And then it's like, wow, this is Monday is like Friday. It's the same day.
Right? They say that when you love what you do, you never work a day in your life.
Yeah, 100%. And I also love the new definition of retirement is doing all of what you love and none of what you hate, then you're retired. Because I'll never not do what I'm doing. It doesn't matter how old I am. I'll quote unquote work less. I think retirement really only comes when you just don't like your job because you just can't wait to be done with it. But if you're traveling a lot of vacation, like who you work with and for, right? You're solving a problem, you're developing people, they're growing. Why would you ever not do that?
I agree. At a lot of the jobs that I worked at before I started CDG, I left them for that exact same problem. For the exact same problem you're describing there, where people are just not really focused on solving the problem, but rather they just want to create problems. I used to have a lot of suggestions for how they could improve their digital marketing because I was in charge of that when I worked at my last company, and my suggestions always fell on deaf ears. That doesn't improve things. I've always believed that management should always be able to listen to what everybody else has to say within the organization. Every employee should have a voice, right?
Definitely.
As we're still continuing the topic of being motivated, please tell me about any accomplishments or awards that StretchMed has made during its 5-year existence.
Great question. So in franchising, everyone's trying to get on the highly coveted Franchise 500 ranking. So if you go to entrepreneur.com and search up Franchise 500, it's just a ranking of the top 500 franchises, and you can't buy your way into it. It's a pretty detailed review process you go through. So we're not quite yet we should hit the Franchise 500 next year, which is great, but we were ranked number 69 in 2023 for the top new and emerging franchises. So pretty cool to get ranked, top new and emerging, and we're confident with this recent growth that we're definitely going to keep moving up the top new and emerging. And also, I think they've got a fastest growing ranking, and then clearly the Franchise 500, which is great. So yeah, that's pretty much it. And then the goal is you keep moving you're all the way up with the goal of getting in the top 10. And our plan for StretchMed is really pedal to the metal to 1,000 locations. So pretty confident we'll hit that by 2036. And when you look at companies, many franchise companies out there that are notable have 1,000 locations, 1,100, 1,300 locations. So we're definitely doing this for, global impact, even beyond the US.
Nice. Which other nations are you looking to expand into outside of the US?
So probably, naturally, we've got a lot of interest from Canada right now, and we'd probably just easily kind of bump up to Canada. And then I think what we're going to start doing is in Europe, we'll probably open up locations, like we might even open up even in Germany initially. Look at the highest GDP countries in Europe, and what we'll do, which is exciting because we're really operators. My whole team is really composed of just a bunch of studio operators. So we'll actually open and flip locations. So rather than wait for people to buy franchises, we'll just literally go open up locations, sell it to someone local, and that'll create the spark, which then accelerates franchise development.
Right. It only takes one location to really start a wildfire, I guess you could say, to, that spark. Once it becomes popular, the concept becomes popular in foreign territory, and they see how successful it is, it's going to set off a chain reaction. It'll go viral really fast. You're going to see other people who want to open StretchMed franchises so they can benefit off the brand and make money.
Yep, definitely. And as mentioned, just the new price point, it's just a total game changer, because now, it's just different than if it's this $300-$400 a month concept that, again, people are choosing either StretchMed or a fitness program that they belong to. Now they get to choose StretchMed and the fitness program they belong to. So it's just adding to their yoga, fitness, whatever they do for training, whatever their self-care routine is. So super excited about that.
As we were speaking, I came up with this idea that I feel a little uncomfortable sharing because I don't want any of your competitors to steal it.
Don't worry about the competition whatsoever. I'm definitely not worried about it.
Have you also considered partnering up with major gyms like LA Fitness and 24 Hour Fitness to open StretchMed Studios within these gyms?
Yeah, definitely great. We've actually piloted that already. Early on, we piloted that, but we had picked a gym that it was more kind of like a neighborhood gym. It wasn't a significant size gym. So we've got that in our pocket. But one other thing that's interesting is 2/3 of our customers that we've surveyed do not belong to a gym. So if you think about that for a second, if 2/3 of our customers do not belong to a gym, but now we're asking them to walk through a gym to get to us, there's a little bit of friction there. So we definitely like clean brick and mortar. I pull on the door, I walk into StretchMed, I see a sign, I see windows as parking, just uninterrupted customer experience. You don't have to walk into a gym and maybe you're not comfortable, like whatever that is. But we do think there's a place in some of these large scale gyms that have like thousands of members. I think it would be a really good add-on. So we'll definitely pursue it, but for the minute, we're just concentrating on kind of brick and mortar, lay the foundation. There's also a lot of opportunity, just in home stretching and also going to corporate offices. I mean, how cool would it be to, a business just provides lunch and, stretching to all their employees. What a great way to get people back into the office, take care of your employees.
Right. StretchMed is a concept that can either be held at a brick and mortar location or it can be done remotely too, especially once the app is done being developed.
Definitely.
And I certainly understand the need for privacy as well. Your customers, when they come into the studio, they want to be in a more private, calm environment versus one that's very open and can be distracted by who knows what. The busier the environment, the harder it will be to focus on the stretching exercises or really anything in general. This is not exactly related, but for me, if I go to a restaurant, I like to go to one that's quiet and doesn't have a whole lot of people or really loud music, just a really calm setting. I don't like going into a restaurant where the line's going out the door. Everybody's basically shoulder to shoulder with other people because there's just really no breathing room. Every table has a crowd. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
That's what StretchMed customers want when they come in. They want privacy. They want it to be calm. They want that one-on-one session. They don't want to be shuffled in with a bunch of people all at once where they don't really feel comfortable and they don't really have that true focus on what they're learning, on trying to stay fit.
Yep. Yeah. They want a predictable experience. Like most customers, when they go somewhere, they want to know it's going to be the same every time they come.
That being said, how can CDG BizCast listeners support StretchMed? So we have two audiences. We have business owners and we have consumers. So how can business owners start a StretchMed franchise? What do they need to do to get started? And for consumers, how can they sign up to join the StretchMed program?
Yeah, I would say first, everyone should just go get a professional one-on-one stretch. And if there's not a StretchMed near you, just go to any of them. Just go try it out. And we always tell people, try everyone out and then come to us, and then you're going to see the difference. So go get a free stretch somewhere. Most places, you can probably get a free one. That's cool. The second thing, and for those interested in pursuing this as a business or an investment, our website is StretchMedStudios.com, and there's a franchise form you can fill out, and that'll lead to a discovery call where we'll show you the whole ins and outs, just the whole process of opening and operating a StretchMed, the support that goes into it. We've got a checklist. There's like 180 items on a checklist. So it's super granular. And then, we're updating our FDD right now, but all stores open in 2022. Average profit was $76,000 a year after all expenses. So it was a decent return on investment, but particularly you want to focus on return on cash. So how much cash did you invest? What was the return on that cash? And what's your return on time, right? That's really the other big one, is how much time did it take you to run this particular business or what you're doing? So yeah, you go to that. And then the third thing that's kind of hot off the press, it isn't really live yet, but where we've narrowed options down to either Republic.com or Start Engine. These are equity crowdfunding companies. So it's kind of exciting. We're gonna, for the first time, this is something I'm gonna teach any business owners I come in contact with, is this equity raising formula. We're gonna basically raise capital via this equity platform, and it's going to be exciting. And the cool thing is that you don't have to be a accredited investor. I think it'll be as low as $100, so people can buy fractional shares of StretchMed and get their feet in the investing space. And there's a bunch of other companies on there which are really cool. There's actually one, Mayweather Boxing is a big fitness franchise, and I noticed that they're on the site as well. So your listeners could get a kick out of looking at Republic.com, look at all the different investment opportunities. We should be up there in the next, month or so. And yeah, otherwise, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm pretty much really not on social media, but LinkedIn, Brian R. Cook. And I'm going to start developing some content as I move out of sales. And as we talked about earlier, what I would encourage, you, your listeners, and everyone else, is that if you ever want to buy a business or open a business, get really clear on the vision. And we've got this 11 module framework. And in the first module, we define as vision. And this is for the founder or the investor or owner. And you get it clear on, what's the purpose of the business, which is what problem is it going to solve? Does that resonate with you? Are you passionate about it? Does it excite you? Then you've got to articulate what are your core values, right? And the reason you want to get clear on what your core values are is that you have to share those with people you're going to hire. And those core values will either attract or repel people. You don't want to hide that and then start working closely with people and then just find out you don't connect. So get clear on purpose, core values, and then your mission. And, for StretchMed, it wasn't opened for 10 locations or 100 locations, open for 1,000 locations. And that's not 999, that's a minimum of 1,000. So that's the mission. And then the brand, we get really clear that StretchMed's a premium brand. This is what it stands for. And then build a financial model. And the financial model is you're going to get clear on what's it going to cost to open and then what's it going to cost to operate. And then a pricing strategy, how are you going to price and sell your services, which will influence the financial model. And then the thing with the financial model, these assumptions have to be reasonable. So when I built StretchMed, I put together a financial model based on what my competitors were charging. So I didn't just create we're going to charge $200 an hour, even though no one in the space charges that. So, and then once you get done with this module one, this vision framework, then the whole idea is it sells you. Because if you're not 1,000% sold in this, then you don't move to module two. And module two is people. And then really you're going to hire, train, and fire to purpose, core values, and mission. And then we've got, 9 other modules, but it begins with module one. So there was something that I'm going to probably do for fun is I'm going to build a free course with this, this vision framework course, help, wannabe entrepreneurs or current entrepreneurs or people that want to buy a business, just kind of go through this framework, get yourself clear on doing what you love, and then go ahead and get into the other 10 modules and then scale the business, create some semi-passive or passive income, and then either keep the business or exit at some point in the future.
I feel that anybody who is interested in starting a StretchMed franchise should not feel too intimidated by the process. As you said, everything that they need to know is structured by modules, and they'll be able to learn every single aspect of what it takes to run a StretchMed studio. I think the number one thing that intimidates people is that they don't know where to begin. They don't know if they'll be able to handle it. But by structuring out all these training lessons over how to start and run the studio should ease some of their anxiety, because y'all basically cover every single thing that they need to know to run the studio, such as pricing, location, of course the core values and how to treat employees, and of course how to treat customers.
Yeah, definitely. And with franchising, I don't think it gets talked about enough, but a new and emerging franchisor gets crippled if it has a failure. So we've been fortunate. None of our retail locations have failed. Obviously, there's always going to be some that will struggle, or they may have, we had one owner that turned over a couple of managers fairly quick. So we were kind of concerned that how they're treating the manager could be a problem, because how do you lose two people very quick? So that put a strain on the business. But for the most part, we lose tremendous amount of money if there's ever one that fails, because we have to disclose it in the franchise agreement, the franchise documents. So we're really in tune to that. So we just don't accept anyone to buy a StretchMed. So we want to make sure that they're a good fit. And then we just provide this kind of white glove service because we really need them to be successful. And then later, the goal is, if owners have 1, 2, 3 stores, you need way less owners to reach your mission. And there are many, many, many great franchises. So your listeners could also go to the Franchise 500 and just search the Franchise 500 list. Even though we're not on it, there's many that are. But yeah, it's pretty cool.
And lastly, as we get ready to close out the show, is there anything else that you would like to tell the listeners that we didn't get to discuss?
No, I would think my advice would just be, give yourself, create some time, and for me, the morning is just always better, some fresher, but I would make sure you guys create at least an hour of free time. Write down your goal setting. I mean, if you haven't read Think and Grow Rich, it should be required reading. Rich Dad Poor Dad is another really good series. He's got another book, Cash Flow Quadrant. So you got to define, definite chief aim, like what it is you want to accomplish. And then you got to be repetitious and, work on your mind, work on your thinking, and just take that hour for yourself before you kind of get into your day and get, hammered in a bunch of different directions. Just give yourself an hour. And then if you're doing what you love, you're in great shape. If you're not, that's okay. But just start to guard that time. If you're working 60 hours a week and you don't love what you do, then I would definitely make that change. So get into that 30, 40 hours a week of paying the bills and start to build the side hustle. And you got to start trying stuff, do what's fun, work for free somewhere to get the experience. And then just start to think about developing income producing assets, and a business is one of those. And, and then obviously you build a business once, you can then franchise it and scale that way. And that's pretty cool. You don't have to own everything. You can actually just teach other people what system you use to become successful.
Very well said. I've always believed that franchising takes a lot of the legwork that most people deal with when starting a business out, because when you franchise, you have a corporate parent that supports you along the way. They give you the concept, they train you on what you need to do. Those are areas where a lot of business owners tend to struggle with, especially if they're just starting a business from scratch and they're not exactly sure what they need to do. It's a very common issue in the business world.
Yeah. Franchising is just providing shortcuts. So you're really paying experts, even just the startup alone. Every franchise has an initial fee, and it's roughly in that, $30,000 to $50,000 range. So our franchise fee is $40,000. So we're able to save people easily $40,000 on just the process of opening a StretchMed. Everything from negotiating the lease, finding a location, building out the store, economies of scale on all the products, negotiating with the contractor. So that's really the idea, is it's economies of scale, and then ongoing support. You pay 6% of sales, but again, think about it. You're paying experts 6% of your revenue to coach, support, and teach you every step of the way. So our revenue is tied to your success. That's what's kind of cool. So we're constantly focused on how do we increase your revenue, because when your revenue goes up, ours goes up, and you get 94%, we get 6%. So it's just making a little bit of money off a lot of people, and then creating this ecosystem of awesome franchise owners that are really looking to make their mark in the world. And we have many that have brought their kids into the business, and succession planning kind of going on, and really cool stuff.
Right. It's important to plan every stage of business, especially the exit planning. A lot of people assume that they're going to be in business forever, but that's not always going to be the case. You might just decide, even after being successful for several years, you've got to have a succession plan, an exit plan. How are you going to hand the business off to somebody else? Do you have family you're going to sell it to? Are you going to sell to private equity or investors? Those are just different options right there. But I want to take a few steps back right before we close as well. Another piece of required reading for every business owner out there would be Tillman Fertitta's Shut Up and Listen. This book I read from cover to cover, and he talks about all sorts of different things about business, especially how to treat customers and how to be accommodating for them. That's really important in any business. And he owns Landry's Inc., which is the parent company of several different restaurant concepts like Landry Seafood, Rainforest Cafe, Joe's Crab Shack, just to name a few. And he's also the owner of the Houston Rockets. It's a really good book, and I recommend everybody who's starting a business to read that. If business ownership came in a box, that book would be the startup manual.
Wow. Yeah, I'll have to check it out. I haven't read it.
I also want to say as a final note that every business owner out there needs to stay energized. And Brian, as a final question, what would you recommend to all the people who struggle to get up in the morning? A lot of people like to binge on unhealthy caffeinated sodas and teas just to help themselves stay awake in the morning. And I'll admit I'm guilty of that too. But what do you recommend that they should do instead so that they have the energy to get up in the morning and perform their daily tasks to run the business?
Well, I mean, me personally, it's water and black coffee in the morning. But one thing I'd recommend that's kind of a free tool is if you Google FRC, the morning routine, there's actually a free stretching routine that you can find that a bunch of mobility kind of experts put all for free on YouTube. So, 15-minute morning routine. It's kind of like flossing your joints, just kind of get moving. But I really think it begins with, when you think about it, the only thing that's really changing two people, we all have the same amount of time, right? That's a fact. Most don't have resources. I've never really had a lot. I started with no money, so the resources wasn't there. But it's really our mind. The only thing that really separates people is thinking. And when you read the book, Think and Grow Rich, for me, it was the first book that got me to stop and say, wait a second. If you think about your thinking, you start to realize that thoughts are either assets or liabilities. So get clear about your thinking, get clear about power of association, who you're hanging out with, start to become really efficient with your time, and then work towards what you love. And then boom. Another really person that everyone should follow is this guy, Dan Sullivan from Strategic Coach. He's been coaching entrepreneurs for 40 years and he's turning 80. And the guy is like literally, he said he's accomplished more from 70 to 80 than he did from 0 to 70. So he just creates this huge longevity mindset, and then tons of stuff he gives away for free, all his social channels, and it's pretty awesome. So I think we just got to take action. It's like just take action tomorrow, and get to bed early. And to me, the whole TV thing, it's so easy to get pulled into shows, but you got to kind of nip that or keep it to just the weekend. But during the week, all business, and just we've got the same 24 hours. So it's how you use the 24 hours is what's going to separate two people.
That's some great advice. And I learned something new myself just based on what you told me here. Thanks again, Brian, for coming on the show and talking to our listeners, sharing StretchMed with the world, and sharing some great advice that you have for the business owners out there. I know StretchMed is going to be extremely prosperous. You're expanding rather rapidly, and I definitely can see this be landing the list of some of the best franchises out there that anybody could get. There's a lot of concepts out there. Yours is very unique, and I definitely see StretchMed becoming a very well-known brand in the world as you expand, that the sky's the limit. It's going places.
Awesome. Thanks, Christian. I appreciate it, and glad to be here. Thanks for having me, and I'm sure we'll talk again in the future.
Yes, I would love to have you on another episode of BizCast. You take care now, and we will talk soon.
You got it. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.